Hey everybody, this is Peter from the Ultimate WordPress Guide and welcome to another WordPress tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to create an appointment booking form like this using nothing more than Elementor and Piotnet Addons for Elementor. Okay, so let's get started. First I'll show you how it works and then I'll show you how it's done. So here I've got a booking form. Let me just refresh the page. So I've built a multi-step booking form. If you don't know how a multi-step booking form works, I've put a link in the description, and you can also find a link to the top right hand corner here for that particular video. So first things first, I have a date picker, so I can select a date here. I've got the available time slots for that particular day, so I can change the dates and you'll see the time slots are available. I select the time slot and immediately you'll see there that it increments the price of that particular slot. I'll show you in just a moment how that gets configured. I can set this to be multiple selection, so I can select multiple slots in any given day, and obviously also I can increment the number of guests that I have for this particular booking. So here I've got a field which is conditional, where I can fill in some guest details, so either myself or if I'm bringing multiple guests, I can add multiple guests information there as well. And as you'll see with the time slot selected, the price updates. So next, onto the second step of the form. This is where I'll fill in all the booking details, name, email address, etc. That the payment gateway, in this instance I'm using a Stripe checkout, and this is all the information that I'll need for the Stripe checkout. Okay, so before I get started, just from a configuration standpoint, I want to use Stripe in this regard. So I want to be able to here fill in the Stripe integration details. So first I'll head over to my Piotnet add-on settings, and if you scroll down you'll see that there's a Stripe integration area, and this is where I'll put in my publishable and my secret key that I can find on my Stripe interface under the developer section for the API keys. So I've got my test keys in here just to be able to test this environment, but you can also put your production, publishable and secret API keys in. Okay, so that's it for the form. Let's take a look at how it's done. So I've got a normal, just a single column in here where I've put a title and a simple separator in, and then I've put the multi-step form widget in. So I can find the multi-step form by just going to multi-step, and I've dragged that widget in. And again, you'll get all the details in the other video about how to create a multi-step form, but effectively I need two separate templates, which is my step 1, which is the booking area, and step 2, which is the billing details, which I'll specify in this step form. So first and foremost, I need to specify a booking ID, and very importantly, every single field within this form, doesn't matter which step it is, has to reference the same booking or the form ID to allow this form to work. Okay, so I've specified booking_form as my form ID, and I've placed the two steps in. So I've got a personal details, which is step 1, and I've copied and pasted the template ID for the personal details, and I've got the billing details here, which I've done exactly the same thing. I've copied and pasted the template in. Okay, so on the multi-step form, a couple of things that are important. And I want to focus on some of the button settings. So here I can specify the previous, the next, and the submit button text. This is a booking form, so I want to specify that as book now. Under the action after submit, I want to do two things. I want to send an email to myself notifying me of the booking being placed, sending me all the details that the user fills into the form. And I also want to create a booking instance, log that booking in my form or my booking database, and it also needs to keep track of all the bookings that I have to make sure that the availability information gets updated. Under the booking section, here I have to specify the booking table, which is the details here. I'll get into that in just a moment once we start looking at all the fields and the setup of each of the forms or each of the steps, the templates within the form. So I need to specify the booking ID, and for the Stripe payment, this is where I need to configure quite a few things. Yeah, first off, obviously, first and foremost, I need to enable it. I need to select the currency that I'm currently working with, that is supported by Stripe. Is this a subscription or a one-off payment? This is obviously a one-off payment, so I'm not going to put subscriptions on. And then I want my Stripe payment to be based on the price field ID that I have. So I'm going to calculate the price of the booking and all the slots that are available, the number of guests that book, and I'm going to take that value and feed it into the amount. Yeah, we'll look at that price field in just a moment. And then there's a couple of things that Stripe needs in terms of information. So I've populated all of these in the second template. Yeah, these are all the billing details. So if I go back, I've got the billing name, so that's the name of the person making the booking, email, phone number, address, city, country, etc., etc. Yeah, and then also I want to send that person an email as well, based on the booking that they've made. So these are pre-populated fields. That's the payment ID shortcode. That's part of the details for the Stripe integration, payment status, and then I've got a couple of messages here. And then again, I can customize these succeeded, pending, or failed messages. So here you can see I've got a couple of other payment options available. So I can do PayPal, I can do Molly payment. None of the details here have been set up, but in this video we're going to focus on Stripe payment. So I'll leave it at that. Okay, so that's it for the setup really on the multi-step form. Not too much else to do in this regard. So I'll head over to the templates area, and this is where we'll get into the details of each one of these steps and what each one of these fields need to do and how it needs to be configured. So let's start right at the top. So I've got my booking form ID, which needs to be consistent across all the fields in this form. I've specified a unique field ID, which populates a shortcode. I've used the date type field here, which will give me this date picker option. Then I've got a label that says select a date, and I can style these accordingly. I can put some placeholder text in there if I want to, specify an icon, autocomplete. It's very important here for me that I want to make these fields required, because in order for the person to successfully create a booking, I need all of this information, so I've set that up as a required field. So under the default value here, I've got the option to use a dynamic field, which I'm using current date and time. So if I click on the little wrench icon there, I can get into the settings of what I'd like the date and also the time format needs to be for this particular field. Okay, so that's pretty much it on the date side. Next, over to the booking table, which is probably one of the most important bits of this in terms of how I set it up and how it needs to talk to the other fields to collect the information. So again, here I've specified the form ID, and you'll see a new required field that is available, which is the booking ID. Yeah, so if I go back again to the multi-step form over here, under the booking area, you can see that that's the booking shortcode that it was asking me for earlier. Okay, so I've got the booking ID here. It populates a shortcode. I can put in a label, which is that over there, show the label, make it a required field, and here I select the date picker option. Yeah, slightly different to the date option. So the date picker option gives me the option to select to create these little date picker blocks here. Yes or no, I want to be able to book multiple slots in the same day. Yeah, it's entirely up to you. And getting into the date picker options, let me just switch this on for a moment so you can see all the information. So I've got a time, I've got an available slot, and I've got a price. So this is the text that I want to display before the slots that I have available. So I can change that, that's customizable. If there's any text that I want to display behind the number, I can do so. And very importantly, if there aren't any more slots available for the day, I need to be able to show this in some way so that people can't overbook. Yeah. So here I've got multiple selections selected. I want to show the available number of slots. I'm not going to show the price because you'll be able to see the price in the calculated field down below. Okay, so next up is where I then create the fields or the slots within the particular day, and I can create as many as I want. And it's very simple to configure. I click on the add new item, it brings up an empty form where I specify the slot ID, which is also a unique ID. I can specify the number of slots for that particular timestamp, the title, that's just the title that gets displayed there, and then the price, very importantly. So this is just the price text, which is the text element that displays here in the date picker box. But this is the actual value where it's going to use that in the calculation, where I multiply the number of guests by the number of slots to populate this calculated field to give me the price. Yeah, so that's very important. Here I can pretty much specify whatever I like in whatever format I like. Okay, so I've repeated this a number of times just to create a couple of slots in the day. Very repeatable. You can just duplicate these and change the slot ID and all the details within. Okay, so next up I have a how many guests is the booking for. So this is just a simple number field. So again, booking form, I give it a unique form ID and I select the number field. But this is not a regular drop down number field as you might be used to, but I've created this as a add plus minus button, as you can see. So if I toggle left to right, that increases and decreases the quantity there. I've given it a label as well, which is that label over there. I've made this a required field. By default, this is set to 1. So I may even go and say, look, because by default, it is already set up as the default value of 1. They cannot book any less, so therefore not necessarily a required field. So we'll leave that as is. I can have a minimum value, which is a minimum value number of people that can book, and a maximum value, which can be incremental. I can put in any value there that I like. So the next part then is quite interesting. And this is where I've used some repeater fields to be able to, in the scenario where I've got more than one person, I perhaps want to specify the client details. Yeah. So if I just quickly head over, let's just do a quick save. And I head back over to the front end, just hit refresh. As you can see here, so I've got the slot that I've selected, I've got the number of guests, and here I've got a trigger, yeah, which is where I've got some conditional logic. So if this field is clicked, it reveals the repeater field, and then I can add as many repeater fields as I want. And we'll get into the details of this repeater field in just a moment. So I can add and I can remove these fields based on the number of guests that I have. So if this is unchecked, that field is not visible. If that is checked, that field is visible. Okay, so this is very simple. It's just a simple acceptance field. So again, booking form, guest details, it's got the short code. I want to show the label here next to it, and I want to show the acceptance text. Well, I don't have a label, so I can actually turn that off really in effect if I wanted to. But I've got the acceptance text, which is next to the checkbox, which is click here to fill in guest details. And the conditional logic is actually on the next part. So the conditional logic here is if I select that field, then this field needs to display. Now you'll see something quite different here, and that's, well, now I don't just have one field, I've got multiple fields. So how do we actually do that? So I've gone and created an inner section, and I've nested a few fields inside of this inner section. So I'll use this inner section effectively as a single field, okay, or a repeater box. The fields inside though are set up the same way as any of the other fields are. I've got the form ID, I've got the field ID, text, label, details, and so on. So that's a text field. This is a phone number, so that's a telephone field. So it's got certain patterns that it needs to follow within that field. And the same for the email. This is an email type field. I've got a placeholder text there, etc. Now, what makes the repeater field quite impressive is I want to be able to increase and decrease the number of fields that I have, repeating the fields effectively. In order to do so, I need to build in some triggers. Yeah, we'll get back to the settings of this section in just a moment, but I need to build in some triggers. So you can see here, I've built the inner section with 3 columns. So I've got 2 columns that the fields are in, and then I've got just a single column where I've got just a normal Elementor icon. Yeah, nothing fancy, and the same for the one on the outside. Just a simple Elementor icon from the icon library. Now, what's critically important here to remember is the triggers and their positions. So the trigger that closes the repeater needs to sit on the inside of the section that contains all the fields. The trigger that adds new repeaters needs to sit on the outside. Okay, so back on the inner section, one thing that's uniquely different is the settings and how I need to set it up. So how does the form builder know that it needs to select this entire area? So I'm going to the inner section and I'm going to go to the PAFE tab there, and I'll go into the form builder repeater section. So here again, I put in the form ID. I give it a repeater ID, which is this entire area now. It's not a field ID. What is the repeater label? Guests. So I'm not showing any labels at this point, but that's the label. And this is the short code that it generates. Okay, that's one. So now onto the triggers. Same thing. I want to go into the close trigger. I want to go into the PAFE tab, and right at the bottom, I've got a form builder repeater trigger. So I've enabled that. I've said I want to use that on the booking form. I want to use it on the guest's repeater, and this icon needs to remove the repeater. You can see where I'm going with this. If I go onto PAFE with the plus icon selected, same thing, I go to the repeater trigger, I specify the form, I specify the repeater, and here I say that I want to use that to add a repeater field. Okay, and that's pretty much it. A lot to it. But if you follow it step by step, it's a pretty easy thing to accomplish. And then last but not least, on the step 1 template is the calculated field, which I'll use to calculate the number of slots that I've selected, or the price of the slot, plus the number of guests that I have to give me that calculated price. Okay, so I've got a number field, again, form ID, field ID, I've got a number field, I've put in a label, I'll show the label, yes, of course. And here I want to, wrong one. Calculated field, I specify that as the price. And here's the calculation. So I wanted to take the booking table, which is this, and I want to multiply it by the guest quantity. Yeah, very simple math. I can specify rounding, decimals, etc., etc. If I have any currency symbols, in this regard it's dollars, I've got a prefix of the dollar symbol, and I've got a space just to give me that space there. Obviously, if I remove that space, you won't see the update immediately, but the number will then be directly adjacent to the symbol, which is not exactly what I want. Okay, I just want to quickly head back here to the booking form, and I want to just toggle that off so we've got a bit of a more slim, minimal design. Okay, so that's all for the first step, which is the booking area. So next I'll head over to the billing details. Pretty straightforward here. I've just got a very small heading there, or a title that says this is the billing details, and I've created multiple fields, again, each of them with a unique field ID but a consistent booking form ID. So I've got one for full name, I've got one for address line 1, address line 2, nothing strange here, city, province, postal code. I can change that to a number field if I really wanted to. Email field, so that's an email type field, phone field. And I've made all of these required because, as you'll remember from the multi-step form, if I go to the Stripe payment area, these are all the fields that I need to populate. So if I don't have them captured, I cannot populate them. Okay, so I've created all these fields. The only one that's slightly different is the select field that I've used for the countries. So I've got a drop-down select field, and here I've pasted in as options all of the countries that are available. So you can see if I click down there, you can scroll and you've got all the countries available in that country field. Okay, nothing more to do here. On the Stripe payment widget, or the Stripe payment field rather, again, I've got booking form, I've got Stripe payment, it's a Stripe payment. I've got a label here. I can put an icon there, it'll just place an icon to the left or to the right here. I can specify the type of icon, width, spacing, size, and so on. And that's it. The settings of the Stripe checkout is actually not on the field, but as you've seen earlier, it sits on the multi-step form itself in the Stripe payment configuration. Yeah, and again on the button here, all the actions after submit, I've got a booking, so once it submits the booking, it automatically picks up that this is a Stripe payment, and it'll pick up that payment. Okay, so we've covered step 1, we've covered step 2, we've covered the multi-step form. So let's take a look at how this works in practice. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and select the date. So let's say we'll do this Thursday, and I want to choose this one because I want to show you as well how it works when I've booked out a particular slot. That obviously that slot is no longer available. Okay, so I've got one slot available here, so I'm not going to add any additional guests. Here I'm not going to fill in any information because it's just me. I'm going to be the person that this will be billed to as well. These are not required fields, so I don't have to fill these in. So I've got the date, I've got the time slot, I've got the price there, and over here, let's say I'm John Doe. My email is john@example.com. I live somewhere. Address line is somewhere else. It's in city. Let's say it's in the US. Call that state. Phone number. This is a required field as well. I'll fill that in. Postal code 12345. And here I'll just use some dummy credit card details for testing purpose. Everything populated. Perfect. I'll click on the book now button, and very shortly you'll see a message that says either payment failed or payment success. Fantastic. Payment success. Your booking was made successfully. Okay, so let me just refresh the form. We'll go back and just take a look at July 8th. So July 8th. Now you can see, because I've booked that one slot that was available, now this option is no longer available, just as it says. So heading back to the form booking area, as you'll remember over here, I specified that action on submit, it needs to create a booking entry as well. So if I go to the booking form database area and I click here, you can see that there's the booking. So if I click into that, you'll find the details basically of all the fields that have been populated, the booking ID, the booking price text, and a bunch of details, and then obviously just the payment status there. Okay, and that's it really. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you found it useful or helpful, please leave us a comment below. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our channel, hit the bell for notifications, and stay tuned for more great content. I've put a few links to tools, services, plugins, and other videos in the description below. These are affiliate links, and if you purchase a product through one of them, including Piotnet Addons for Elementor, I will receive a commission at no additional cost to you, of course. I only endorse products that I've personally used, and your support helps me put out more great content. So thanks. See you next time. Bye for now.